Maruti Suzuki's People Technology presents Suzuki Connect with Navigate to Car and many other features.
Watch more, feel more. Dell.
And the defending champions are now formally out. The West Indies have gone down to Sri Lanka by 20 runs, who end their T20 World Cup campaign on a high. Two wins, which won't be enough to take them to the semi finals, but it is a young team. Didn't come in with that sort of expectation. They take a lot of positives from this win, as Maila Jayawardena in a minute will point out. Darren Ganga here as well to look back at a West Indies side that will have some questions to answer as a result of their pre-semi-final exit. This is Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. Let me start with you, Maila, because it looked like Sri Lanka was the team that had more to play for today. There was fire, there was passion. They've played good cricket and not ended up on the good side of the result. Today was different. You must be thrilled for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think not just me. I think the entire country will be very proud of the guys. It hasn't been a successful campaign, but I think they've shown a lot of character, shown passion and hunger to improve. I think today was a classic example. Like they were out of the tournament. Nothing bad to say about Bangladesh, but Sri Lanka was pretty much on the same footing. That they turned up against a very strong
Yes.
West Indies side, experienced West Indies side, and they played some really good cricket. Losing the toss, they put the runs on the board, batted with structure, batted with maturity. And they needed those runs. I mean, if you see, even at the end, West Indies still had power to get close. So Sri Lanka definitely needed that 189. I mean, we were talking about a power score of 160. That wouldn't have been enough. So Sri Lanka did enough to get that second win. And unfortunately, they're not going to be part of the campaign any more longer. But I think this group will take a lot from this World Cup, a lot of experience, a lot of emotions, and hopefully they can build on that.
Hmm. The West Indies still had their tournament alive, Darren, when they came into this game today. Now, we've seen two types of results here. One where you're outplayed by a superior opposition and you don't bring your own A game. And the other when you're expected more and you just don't show up. What was today for the West Indies for you? Did they bring their A game and they were outplayed, or did they just not bring their A game?
I think the West Indian team today was a much better West Indian team than what we saw in the previous three matches. Even that win against Bangladesh wasn't a clinical win. It could have gone either way in that last over. I agree with you. Today, Sri Lanka was just the better team on the day. If you look at how they bat, it was a near perfect batting performance, and they batted according to their strengths. They're not a big power boundary hitting team. They use their dexterity, their skill, their soft touches, and they accumulated 189 runs. And all credit to them in the manner in which they accumulated it. They played the middle overs really well, scoring at just over 9, which is an exceptional
Okay. I, I I was hoping Darren
effort,
Ganga's.
lot of room for
Yeah,
improvement.
yeah, I got you back. So I just lost you in the middle, Darren. Are you back with me now? Are you back with me, Darren? The middle overs of the West Indies were perhaps just a bit
But I
stronger
think
than the middle of Darren Ganga's point. Now I have you back. So it's broken. It's a bit hit and miss, much like the West Indies campaign. Your internet in Trinidad, Darren. But I'd like you to try and finish that point. Yeah, if you could carry on, please. Okay, now I'm going to have Darren just jump off and jump back on. But there will be questions
selections.
asked of the West Indies. Darren, sorry, if you could just jump off and back on, I'm sure we'll get your internet sorted out because there are some questions that will be asked of the West Indies. And Myla, as the tournament comes to an end, or at least the title defense comes to an end, they will have one more game against Australia. You saw runs today from Hetmai and Puran and nothing much else. I'm guessing if they have to do a review, it'll start with their batting, which has been the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, I think that's been what is let them down because they're a powerhouse batting team and they expect the top order to fire, and they play at a very high tempo. And once they play at that high tempo, then it's much easier for their bowlers to, control things out there in the middle. And they probably were couple of bowlers light as well. I mean, usually you see West Indies team having someone who's bowling around 145, 150 mark, and then you always have that mystery element to them as well. Like you have your Sunil Narayan or even a wrist spinner, so Samuel Badri. So I think they've just gone away from that element a little bit, and that's probably is those are the things that they would discuss going forward. The modern day cricket, especially in T20 cricket, the bowlers control things. Bowlers are the ones who are going to, win most of the matches and championships. So having a powerhouse batting team is one thing, but at the same time, they need to put more focus on bowling. They cannot have bits and pieces of guys. When they had that, also they still had those strike bowlers who control things for it. So I think that those are conversations that West Indies will have going forward.
Darren, I wonder if you managed to catch all of my last point there. Two parts to it. One, whether the power game wasn't enough, or whether the power game needed a little bit of tinkering for these conditions, and whether they had the personnel to do it. And two comes to the bowling, which Mahela makes points of, lacking an express fast bowler, maybe a wrist spinner, a mystery spinner. What are the takeaways and reviews for the West Indies after this tournament now?
Well, he's spot on. The West Indies, they're playing a dated brand of T20 cricket, a brand that brought success in 2016 and 2012. What they haven't done is evolve in terms of balancing their boundary hitting skills and power with the rotation of strike and some softer skills, whether that should have come from selecting certain players to add that sort of dimension to the team. They haven't gone in that direction, and they've paid a heavy price. There was a lot of debate in the Caribbean about this squad being aged, this squad playing a style of cricket which is one that brought success in the past and might not necessarily bring the type of success expected in this 2021 ICC Men's T20 World Cup. And we've seen it come to pass. So there will be a lot of answers for Kieron Pollard, Coach Phil Simmons, and the selectors when it comes to the wash-up at the end of this tournament. But I also want to say that from a bowling point of view, the squad selection, the actual selection of the 11 players for this game was very conservative. We knew that the pitch would have been a better pitch for batting than what we've seen in earlier matches in Abu Dhabi. And Kieron Pollard just opted for the same type of players and the same type of bowlers. You didn't see that versatility. There was no X factor. You could have considered an O'Shane Thomas in this West Indian side, someone who bowls close to 150, bringing a different dimension to the band of just medium pieces in the squad. We haven't seen the inclusion of Hayden Walsh Jr., who's been the most prolific bowler for the West Indies in the build-up to this T20 World Cup. So there will be questions asked. I think Pollard, because of the pressure of it being an ICC T20 World Cup, he's gone the conservative route and he's paid a heavy price for that. They haven't shown faith in young players. That's another thing that you would look back and you would see there's been a greater investment on aged players with a past reputation, and those players just have not delivered for the West Indies in very, very tough and intense situations.
All right, brilliant. Mila, I'm sure you got all of that from Darren. What I'm really trying to think of is Darren makes a strong statement that their brand of cricket, T20 cricket, may well be outdated. Do you believe that it was an outdated brand, or do you believe it just wasn't conducive to these conditions? And if this World Cup were in India or the next T20 World Cup were in Australia, that they may have greater success playing exactly the same way with the same type of batters?
No, I agree with Darren, but it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's outdated. You need power. I mean, why wouldn't you have guys like York Purans and Hetmeyers and Pollards and all that? But at the same time, you need to strike the balance. You need to glue those power hitters in the middle together. You need guys who can rotate strike, who can bat, deeper, control things, but still have the tempo to go. And at the same time, the mistake that one thing that you stick with that brand of cricket they played in 2012 and 2016, and they've gone away from that brand of cricket when it comes to their bowling, because the bowling always had that X factor in West Indies. I mean, they had the pace, they had the spinners. That's how they play. I mean, these conditions are good for those kind of bowlers. I mean, I mean, Sunil Narayan had a great IPL coming into this season. I mean, that was a few weeks back. So the X Factor bowlers. I mean, Hayden Walsh Jr. I watched him bowl against Sri Lanka. I think in the Caribbean. I'm pretty sure, Darren, that was like 4 months, 5 months ago when Sri Lanka was touring, and he bowled really well, and he was part of that T20 setup. So I think they've gone away from that um old structure too quickly when it comes to bowling, but they hang on to the batting structure, which I think they could have tinkered a bit more and had that versatility, having guys who can do that. And I've seen there's a lot of cricketers in CPL who are able to do that and who will complement these power hitters in this West Indies group. I mean, uh, any team would love to have a couple of these power hitters. At any given time they can clear ropes, whether it's 80 meters or 90 meters, which is great to have. But it's just striking that balance so that you can adapt to conditions, you can adapt to oppositions, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I find it very interesting, Darren, that the two of you are spending a lot of time on the West Indies bowling, which I guess we haven't spoken of as much because of the way their tournament's gone. The 55 all out to start with, their batting has largely let them down, so we've not been able to put the spotlight on the bowling. But if you have to make some tough calls now, we know that Dwayne Bravo is likely to be retired after this tournament. I'm not quite sure on Chris Gale, but you have to make some tough calls now. Which are the players you think, respectfully, the West Indies now should move on from?
Well, Chris Gayle, surely, he is, one of the best T20 players around, and his reputation is undoubtedly a great one. So I think he will have to step aside and make way for another young player coming to this side. Dwayne Bravo has already announced his retirement from international cricket for the West Indies. So you think an all-rounder will get a spot there. Even Ravi Rampal, many felt that he was just pitched forward into this squad of 15 on the back of just one tournament in terms of performing in the region. That's the recent CPL. So there's a sameness to this bowling lineup that they will move away from. Obed McCoy is a fresh look to this West Indian seam attack because of his variety. Again, there's a lot of work to be done with O'Shane Thomas. He is express pace. He is one of the few players with a 5-wicket haul in T20 International. So he might feature a bit more going forward. And from a batting point of view, I think some of the other younger players in the Caribbean, like a Shafane Rutherford, could be in contention. There's an Odean Smith who put his hand up in the recent Caribbean Premier League with his pace, and he's a power hitter. Those are players that will come to the fore. But there needs to be a greater investment in spinners in the Caribbean, in the white ball game, even in the red ball game, because as we can see going forward, the wrist spinners, the finger spinners, they are the more dominant forces when it comes to T20 cricket and 50 over cricket. And there needs to be a greater investment in those players, even if they're not, up to that quality. They must be invested in so that they have time to groom and develop so that they can be ready for very important tournaments like World Cups.
Yeah, fair enough. These World Cups come thick and fast. Now the West Indies still have one game against Australia, but as Sri Lanka bow out with some serious style and grace today, Maila, similar question for you. Going forward, does the future look bright? Enough talent, enough ability, or is there something that's lacking? A skill set, perhaps a type of player that they need to inject to become the finished product?
I think Sri Lanka can take a lot out of from this tournament, but at the same time cannot be complacent thinking that everything's rosy. I think we were not prepared for this World Cup. We should have planned much earlier. We should have built teams towards this World Cup. Yes, I mean we had quite a few players getting suspended and not being available. So we need to sort all those issues out. But going forward, just because this team had a couple of good games and played with passion and character. Yes, we can build on that, but we can't be complacent. We still have to do a lot of homework, a lot of soul searching in finding the caliber of players that we need to produce going forward in T20 cricket. Sri Lanka, what Sri Lanka lacks is a little bit of power in the middle. Being able to finish in tough situations. So we need to be looking for those options. Still, the fast bowling department is not solid. Yes, you have a Chamira, you have Lahiru Kumara, but you're still looking for those execution levels that what T20 cricket demands. We have two good spinners to work with. There are a couple of more other spinners in the wings as well. So I think Sri Lanka is blessed with that, but I think top order batting, little bit of power, bowlers at the depth, execution wise, those are areas that Sri Lanka still needs to keep pushing for in Australia, because Australian conditions going to be quite different to what UAE offered for Sri Lanka.
All right, that is pretty much it then. A wrap on the West Indies, who still have one more game to play, and Sri Lanka, who've been great fun to watch many a time, but haven't quite had enough results going their way. They bow to this tournament. Maila Jayawardena, thank you very much, and Darren Ganga as well. You've lit up my Diwali. I couldn't have dreamt of being with anyone else's company on Diwali Day than Maila and Darren. Talking about Australia, Bangladesh first, and Sri Lanka, West Indies second. Nah, I love it. Brilliant. Always good talking cricket, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Maila, I'll see you in the semi-finals, even
Thank you.
though neither of today's teams get there. Darren, I will see you when Australia and the West Indies kick off in a couple of days. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. That was a wrap from our coverage today of Group 1, where we now have some clear direction. Australia versus South Africa for a 2-horse race, and who joins England from Group 1. And tomorrow, you'd assume that it's a straightforward day with New Zealand take on Namibia and India taking on Scotland, but you never know who slips on a left-out banana skin first, if at all that is to happen. Otherwise, New Zealand, it's theirs for the taking, the semi-final spot. We'll see you tomorrow on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket Info T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. Connect.
Maruti Suzuki's People Technology presents Suzuki Connect with Navigate to Car and many other features.
Watch more, feel more,